Hello everyone, my name is Yara, and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I want to read this fall. As a mood reader, TBRs can be kind of hard for me because I'm always going to want to change up what I read, but I really did want to hone in on some books that I've been meaning to get to for a while, either because I've owned them or I've just seen them around. But I also do want to read some books that are more pertinent to this time of year, help me feel more festive, and feel more excited about the change of the seasons. Because besides the weather, I feel like the only real marker of changing of the seasons is the media and what we tend to consume. But the media around fall can be very different depending on the person. Traditionally, we have Halloween, spooky season, things like monsters, goblins, witches, ghosts, that vein of stories. We have horror and thriller and other kinds of dark and mysterious content. And then we have the more atmospheric type reads, which are not limited to fall, but people tend to read them. Things like dark academia, romantasy, basically things that still fit into that more darker aesthetic, but are more on the cozier side. So with my TBR today, I have 5 different books that are going to cover these topics from various different degrees to hopefully get all of the autumnal vibes. The first book I want to read is probably going to come off as a little surprising. It's kind of random, but it's Wicked by Gregory Maguire. This is the book that the Broadway musical Wicked is based on, and it is the untold story of the Wicked Witch of the West, as well as Glinda the Good, arguably some of the most famous witches in popular culture. And the reason why I want to read this book particularly now is because it is the oldest book that I own that I have still not read yet. I bought this in 5th grade after we sang for good in choir, and I got obsessed with Wicked the musical. And at that time, I was very staunchly that I need to read the book before I saw the adaptation. I got about halfway through, maybe less than half, before I eventually gave up. Side note, this is not something that I think a younger reader should be reading, so that might have also contributed. But the second reason that I want to read this is that the Wicked movie is coming out this November, and the Wicked movie is being split into 2 parts, so it's going to be a lot longer and have a lot more content story-wise than the musical does, and so I'm thinking that they're going to be taking a lot from the book. So I figured that if at any time at all I'm going to read this book, it probably is best to read it now before the movie comes out, and then I can actually see perhaps what they take from it. This is one of those cases where I'm not expecting to love the book. I'm probably going to end up giving this 3 stars as my prediction, but I'm mainly reading it just because I want to know what is actually in this book. I love Wicked the musical, but I know that they changed a lot of things, so I'm just really curious and I want to know. So along the same lines as witches, I feel like fairy tale retellings tend to have a lot of the same kinds of creatures that we gravitate towards during the Halloween spooky months, especially dark gothic retellings such as this next book that I want to talk about, which is The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshni Chokshi. So this book is a reimagining of the fairy tale Bluebeard, or the Rubber Bridegroom, and it follows a man who is a scholar of myths and believer of fairy tales who ends up marrying a mysterious woman named Indigo. In their relationship, Indigo's only request of him is that he does not pry into her past, but when an event forces them to revisit her childhood home, the bridegroom begins to unravel more and more secrets about Indigo's past, secrets that could potentially harm their marriage as well as put risk to their lives. Roshni Chokshi is an author that I'm really excited to explore more of. The only other books that I read by her are her Aru Shah series, which is a middle grade fantasy series, and I really enjoyed those, but they are definitely a much different vibe than this book. But I know most of her work is this more gothic, more romantic, more atmospheric type of stories, and I feel like that will fit really well into a fairy tale retelling. And also I just really enjoy retellings in general in any form, fairy tale, myth, anything of that sort of vein. I love the kinds of conversations that we can have about redefining stories, about commenting on older stories and how they relate to perhaps a modern day audience. And I also like the fact that it's about a fairy tale that is not as popular as, say, maybe a Beauty and the Beast or a Cinderella. So I just feel like it's going to be right up my alley. So continuing in the vein of fantasy and romance, we obviously have romantasy, which is one of the most popular genres nowadays. And this next book was a romantasy darling in the last couple of years, and that is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. This takes place in a world where all sorcerers are considered evil, and our main character Elizabeth has grown up in the Great Library, where she has learned all about the tools of sorcery so that one day she will be a warden to protect against sorcerers. However, when a dangerous object gets released from the library, she ends up getting accused and incriminated in the crime. Now, with no one else to turn to, she must ally with a sorcerer named Nathaniel, who has her question everything that she knows about sorcery, about the Great Library that she was raised in, and pretty much just everything that she knew. Like I said, this was extremely popular a few years ago, and I'm sure is still popular now. I feel like I haven't read many dedicated romantasy books in a while, so I'm really excited about that. I feel like it's going to be the perfect time for it. And I'm also just excited to see what all the hype was about and why everyone seems to recommend this. So obviously with fall, and specifically October, we gotta have some sort of horror in here. But horror kind of intimidates me because I don't particularly like being scared. At least not at night right before bed, which is usually when I'm reading. But I am okay with a little bit of the macabre, a little bit of disturbingness, especially if those books have some sort of commentary or make me think. I'm thinking of Mexican Gothic or The Only Good Indians. And so that's why the next book that I'm planning to read is going to be Lesser Known Monsters of the 21st Century by Kim Fu. This is a collection of short stories that all kind of deal with the strange, the uncanny. It's been described as having Kafka-esque stories, which really excites me. I feel like short stories will be a good way to kind of like microdose some horror into my October. And this is also a pick for a book club that me and my friends are doing, so it'll be fun to discuss, I think. So speaking of being disturbed, the next book that I want to read is Bunny by Mona Awad. This follows a girl named Samantha who's in a highly selective MFA program who encounters a kind of clique of rich girls who refer to each other as Bunny and also who all act and speak like they are one person. A cult, basically. This book has been described in all sorts of ways, weird, bizarre, disturbing, but it also delves into a lot of the nuances of friendships, of the feelings of belonging, as well as loneliness, specifically in female friendships. I have it on record in my mid-year book freakout tag that this was a book that I want to read by the end of the year, so I am putting it at high priority for this fall. Mona Awad is also just an author that I really want to start reading more from. She has a lot of books that a lot of people tend to hype up, so I think this would be a good starting point. So those are all the books that I selected for my fall TBR. I have 3 bonus that I think I might get to, but I'm not sure. It depends on my mood and the time. Those are The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, another book that I've owned for many, many years and has to do with libraries and books and mysteries. The Juniper Tree by Ava Reid, which is a gothic horror retelling of a relatively unknown fairy tale as well. And then Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett, which I feel like is just going to be a very wholesome and atmospheric read. Please let me know some of the books that you're planning to read this fall. I hope these could also serve as possible recommendations for you as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.